Hello all. So in the previous videos we have already seen what a leachate collection and drainage or a removal system is and how a liner system which forms a part of this leachate collection and removal system acts as a barrier for the incoming leachates and thereby prevent the leaching of the contaminants into the subsoil. Now, we have already seen the use of clayey soil as a liner material. Now, in this video, we will see the alternate options that are available for use as liner materials other than the natural clay material. So these are the different types of liner materials that can serve the purpose of being a barrier layer in the or within the leachate collection and removal system. So we can either go for a natural material like a clay soil which will um, satisfy all the permeability requirements as well as the thickness requirements or the design requirements to be met while construction of a liner system. Other than clay, we can also go for something called as a bentonite enhanced soil, where we can select a naturally available, any naturally available soil. It doesn't have to be a clay soil. It can be any naturally available soil. And to this soil, we can add bentonite, which will enhance the properties of this soil to the requirements of a liner material. Okay, so that is what is called as a bentonite enhanced soil. Now, other than natural clay and bentonite enhanced soils, we have some polymeric materials polymeric materials which can be used as an alternate option to naturally available materials. And those two options are uh, part of the geosynthetic materials. Now, geosynthetics are polymeric materials. There are different types of geosynthetics available, and each has a different function to serve, and they can be used in many engineering applications depending upon the the required function to be served in that particular engineering application. So here our requirement is the construction of a liner material for a landfill system. So the basic design requirement to be met is a very low permeable material to be used in the liner system. And for the same, if we have to go for a geosynthetic option, these are the two options available. That is a geomembrane, or it is also called as a flexible membrane liner. And other than geomembrane, we can also use something called as a geosynthetic clay liner or GCL as a liner material instead of the naturally available soils. So instead of using natural clay materials as liner materials, we can also mix naturally available other soils with bentonite to serve as a liner material. Now those soils are called as bentonite enhanced soils, and these bentonite enhanced soils will definitely have improved permeability characteristics, and it has to be made in such a way that it will satisfy all the design requirements of a liner material, and also it will satisfy all the required properties to be met for a liner material. Okay, so all the recommendations and everything for a liner material has to be met by this bentonite enhanced soils as well. So when we are using bentonite, there are two different options actually. We can either use a sodium bentonite or a calcium bentonite. Both have different properties. Okay. In sodium bentonite, the dominant cation is sodium, and in calcium bentonite, the dominant cation is calcium. Now, sodium bentonite has greater swelling and absorbency, but calcium bentonite is comparatively more stable when it is exposed to chemicals. Okay, so anyway, based on our requirement and based on the site specific leachates, we can select a suitable type of bentonite, either sodium bentonite or calcium bentonite. Now, this bentonite enhanced soils is also constructed in layer, just like a compacted clay liner. This is also constructed in lifts or layers. So each lift thickness can be of 250 mm thick, and so it will be compacted in layers of 250 mm thickness, and the final thickness, the minimum final thickness to be maintained for a bentonite enhanced soil is 0.5 meter. Okay. And this mixing of a soil with bentonite, it can be done either in situ, or it can be done outside the site and then brought to the site for the compaction to be done. So, but site mixed soils definitely have certain problems. Like if you are not achieving uniform mixing of this soil with bentonite, then it will not serve the function effectively. Also, the mixing equipment should reach the correct compaction layer thickness or lift thickness to ensure the proper or uniform mixing of soil with the bentonite. And sometimes what happens is that the mixing equipment may even fail to pass over the areas of the loose lift and may inadequately mix certain portions of the loose lift. So, and there are, in the case of slopes, there will definitely be some difficulties of mixing these soils with bentonite. So for most of these reasons, you can do the mixing process of the soil with bentonite outside the site itself and bring the already mixed bentonite enhanced soils at site for its construction purpose. Now, the quality of this bentonite enhanced soil or the quality control, it depends upon various factors like the type of bentonite used, the grade of bentonite, um, as well as the grain size distribution of the processed bentonite, then the type of soil used. Okay, so you are going for a natural soil material here to be mixed with bentonite. So the type of soil used also, governs the final property that is achieved for this bentonite enhanced soil. Then obviously, as I said, uniformity in mixing of soil, that is also one factor um, that can actually influence the uh, final enhanced property of the bentonite enhanced soils. Now, regarding bentonite testing, the testing of bentonite is very similar to that of clay, but we still have to do some additional testing for bentonite. So, obviously, the quality of bentonite used or added to any naturally available soil, that will be a huge influence in making it a proper liner material. So we generally determine the quality of bentonite by means of Atterberg limits. Okay, so usually we conduct the liquid limit for these bentonites, and we call a bentonite as a high quality bentonite, or more specifically high quality sodium bentonite is that bentonite which has a liquid limit in the range of 500 to 700 percentage. Okay, so the liquid limit value, if it is high, that is what defines a bentonite as a high quality or a high grade bentonite. Now, another test which is to be conducted on these bentonites is the free swell test, because obviously the swelling property is what influences the permeability of the final liner material. So, free swell test can be conducted. So, it will determine the amount of swelling the bentonite will have when it is exposed to water. Okay. So, it is seen that these calcium bentonites have a very low free swell compared to sodium bentonite, and usually we go for those bentonites, or we term a bentonite as high grade or high quality one if it has free swell values in the range of 18 to 28 cc. Okay, so that is how we classify bentonites based on its swelling capacity. Okay, so we talked about the type of bentonite, the grade of bentonite, and the obviously the type of soil used. Mostly those soils which has more finer content, uh, shall be mixed with bentonite so that you can reduce the amount of bentonite to be used. And also there is a specific test which can be conducted. It's called as the methylene blue test. Okay, so this test actually helps in determining the correct amount of bentonite to be added to a certain soil that you have selected. So usually the more bentonite in the soil, the greater will be the amount of methylene blue that must be added to achieve the saturation. Okay, and the typical value of bentonite to be added for a bentonite enhanced soil, that will vary in the range of 5 to 15 percentage. Okay, and when you are selecting a soil, you should select a soil, particularly you should select a well graded soil or soils with a high percentage of fines content. Okay, because using such soils will actually help in reducing the amount of bentonite to be added, and also helps in achieving higher dry densities. Okay, and this will improve the permeability of the mix, that is the soil and bentonite mix, and its chemical resistance. So normally these requirements are to be met, like the type, grade, the amount of bentonite, and the type of soil used to for these requirements are to be met for the bentonite enhanced soils to satisfy the design requirements of a liner material. Okay, then obviously the mixing, the uniformity in mixing of the soil with the bentonite also decides on the final uh, performance of this bentonite enhanced soils as a liner material. So these factors are to be taken care for getting a very good quality liner material. So we saw the natural options available as liner materials. That is, either you can use a natural clay soil, or we can use a bentonite enhanced soil as liner materials. Other than those naturally available options, we can go for synthetic options such as geomembranes and geosynthetic clay liners. So first we'll look into geomembranes. Now, out of all the geosynthetic materials, the most impermeable material is, or you can call it as nearly impermeable material manufactured out of geosynthetics or polymeric materials, is the geomembrane. Okay, so obviously this is the first choice for us when we are looking for a liner material, because in a liner material also the main requirement is low permeability. Okay, and these geomembranes are the best to cater to that requirement. But then the general requirements to be met by a geomembrane when it is used as a liner material is low permeability, so that the leaching of the contaminants into subsoil is very minimal. Then physical strength capable of withstanding mechanical stresses and strains. So obviously this is going to be a part of a landfill construction, which is like construction of made with huge tons of waste, and then you have intermediate daily cover system, sorry, you have daily cover system, intermediate cover system, and a final cover system. So it is a elaborate construction process which is taking place, and naturally the geomembranes being the very last or the final or the bottommost part of this landfill construction or profile, this is certainly going to undergo a lot of stresses and strains due to the construction activities. So it should have sufficient strength, especially sufficient impact strength or puncture resistance, so that tensile strength to withstand all of these stresses which are possible to come on the geomembranes. Okay, and then the major or the main purpose of using a liner material is to prevent the entry of leachate. So definitely it is going to come in contact with a lot of chemicals present in the leachate, and the material used for making these geomembranes should be chemically compatible with the type of chemical or the contaminant that it is going to possibly meet while interacting with the leachate. Okay, so therefore before you select a material, we have the manufacturers who make these geomembranes for the contractors, they have to do some chemical compatibility test for these geomembrane liner materials, and that too, the chemical compatibility test should be done with the site specific leachates. Okay, because if you're going to construct a municipal solid landfill, and then for constructing the liner system you need a geomembrane, then you have to look into those, I mean the leachate which is going to possibly generate from this municipal solid landfill, and the chemical compatibility test for the geomembrane material should be tested using those municipal solid landfill leachate. Okay, so then only we will be able to assess correctly whether this geomembrane which has been manufactured is chemically compatible with the site specific leachate or not. Okay, and the thickness normally thickness for this geomembrane liner, it varies. It definitely has to satisfy the design requirements, but mostly it varies in the range of 1.5 to 2.5 mm, and we will recommend a minimum 2 mm thick geomembrane, as it is found to provide greater resistance to this contaminant breakthrough. Okay, so it thereby it can increase the containment system design life, and greater thickness means, obviously greater thickness means increased tensile strength, increased tear and puncture resistance. So anyway the minimum requirement is 1.5 to 2.5, and if possible at least we should be selecting geomembranes with 2 mm thickness for achieving those required tensile strength, tear resistance and everything. Then it is also important to assess the compatibility of geomembranes with the other layers. Okay, especially you can evaluate the interface friction between the different layers of soil and geomembranes, or any other geosynthetic materials. Okay, because during construction these are going to contact with each other, and definitely if we can evaluate the interface friction, that can help us in assessing the stability which will be achieved during construction and at various stages of this waste filling. So we can do some improved direct shear test for assessing the compatibility between, or for assessing the interface friction between um, geomembranes and the soil layers. Okay, so by when we do that we will be able to properly assess the geomembrane stability within this landfill system. So while you are using geomembranes as a liner material, there are certain considerations to be met or looked into, like the manufacturing, handling, installation, anchor trench. So we'll look one by one. Regarding manufacturing, see the choice of the right polymeric material is very important. Okay, so we can use various types of polymeric materials, but out of all the polymeric materials, the most preferred one for making a geomembrane is the HDPE, or the high density polyethylene. Now, why HDPE is preferred over other polymeric materials is that because this is found to have a good chemical as well as biological resistance, and also we can easily seam them together or join them together. Okay, so that is the reason why this high density polyethylene is mostly preferred as the polymeric materials to be used for manufacturing this geomembranes. Then next consideration is to be given for handling of these materials or sheets. Okay, so mostly these geosynthetic materials, they come in the form of sheets. Okay, and handling actually includes all the packaging, storing and transporting of these liner materials. And definitely when you are doing these jobs, the specific requirements and the constraints are to be followed, and it should be carefully done. Otherwise, while packaging or while transporting, there is a chance that your material can get defective. Okay, so everything has to be in compliance with the minimum standards. and the delivery location, the storage arrangements, the mechanism of transport, everything should be detailed in the specification. Okay. Then installation. Regarding installation means finally when you are going to install these geomembranes as the liner material in the landfill construction, then certain there also you have to follow these specifications, and these specifications are to be given by your contractor, because he'll not be installing this geomembranes. So these specifications or the installation procedures have to be carefully laid out, and those have to be followed. Okay, so the correct geomembrane layout plan, the and then the seam preparation. See here, these materials are available as sheets. Okay, so different sheets will be laid out in your site, and then these individual sheets have to be seamed together. You have to stitch it together at the site. So the procedure to be followed for this seaming uh, should be listed carefully, and the methods used for seaming has to be listed. Then the detailed procedures for repairing and documenting construction defects. Then what are the destructive and non-destructive quality control tests to be conducted for geomembranes at the site. So everything has to be detailed out and given to whoever is installing the geomembranes at the site, and that has to be done with proper care. Okay, even the layout plan, by geomembrane layout plan, what I meant is, the panel identification with location, roll number, sequence, and direction of the geomembrane sheet installation. Okay, then the method of laying the sheets should be specified, including the laying and cutting of the geomembranes. Okay, so field installation is also very important. It will also determine the final performance of your geomembrane, because these are individual sheets and finally you are stitching them together or seaming them together. So the final performance also has to be, I mean, it should behave as this uniform um, singular material. Okay. Then what we have is anchor trench. Okay, so what is anchor trench is basically, in order to avoid the slippage of the geomembranes from the layout or from that area where you have installed, usually a bedding can be provided. Okay, a bedding which is 0.6 meter deep by 0.6 meter wide. It's like a trench. A trench can be provided, and in that you can install the geomembrane so that there is no slippage of geomembranes happening while it is installed. So dimensions of these trenches, it can vary according to the tensile loads which are anticipated to be acting on these geomembranes. Okay, and it will also depend upon the strength of the soil uh, with which the embankment is made of. So these are some of the factors to be looked into. There are other factors which we will see. The next factor to be considered is seaming. Now, by seaming means the jointing given for the geomembrane material, or how we can bond them together. Okay, and the selection of a particular bonding system for a particular geomembrane, it's dependent on the polymer which is used for making up this geomembrane sheets. Okay, and there are various types of bonding methods that can be given. It can be a thermal, it can be a bonding by means of thermal process like extrusion or fusion, or it can be by means of a chemical process, either chemical fusion or by means of various adhesives. Okay, so the thermal and adhesive methods, they have the same requirements, that they requirements like, they show both the methods require a clean bonding surface, pressure and time to produce high quality seams. Okay, only the principal difference being that of the requirement of heat for the thermal process instead of adhesive. Otherwise, the requirements are same for both thermal process of seaming as well as chemical process of seaming. Now, next factor to be considered is the field welding. It's a very critical component of any installation of geomembrane. Okay, so in order for the geomembrane to perform effectively and satisfactorily, this seaming at the in the field, this field welding should be performed adequately. Okay, so on hot days where the air temperature is expected to vary appreciably through the day, then welding should be confined to early morning or late afternoon. Now this will prevent excessive wrinkling or spanning. That is, the strain induced will be less when you do it at such during such weather conditions. Okay, so field weldings can be done either by means of fusion welding or by means of extrusion welding. Now, fusion welding or fusion wedge welding, it is actually the primary method of joining two adjacent overlapped geomembranes. Okay, so the wedge, this fusion wedge welder, it creates a fusion weld by heating the facing overlapped surfaces and then pressing them together while in the molten state. Okay, now that is what is meant by fusion wedge welding in the field. Now another way of welding or bonding the two sheets at the site is by means of extrusion welding. Extrusion welding is actually carried out where fusion welding is impractical. Okay, now for extrusion welding, the overlapped sheets are first tacked welded, and then the liner surface area to be welded is abraded. Okay, so at the sheet overlap, the extrusion welder integrates molten polyethylene into the prepared geomembrane seam to create a permanent weld. Okay, so this is the difference between fusion wedge welding and extrusion welding, which is used for field welding of geomembrane sheets. Now the another factor is trial seam welds. That is basically you have to get some test done already on the trial seams. Okay, to verify that the seaming conditions are adequate. Now they also make sure that the trial test done on the seam weld, it should be done at the same conditions which will be encountered during the actual seaming. Okay, so then only we will be able to, basically we have to simulate the field conditions here during the trial seam welding as well. Okay. Now, next is we look into the other factors now. Now, next is about destructive testing, which is done on the seams given to the geomembrane sheets. Okay, so seams are basically the stitches given to the geomembrane sheets, and both destructive as well as non-destructive testing, it is done to assess the quality of these seams. Okay, and whether to see whether they are complying with the project specifications or requirements. Now, destructive testing, either it can be laboratory testing or field testing done. Now, the main two tests which are conducted to evaluate the seam strength are peel test as well as shear test. Okay, so in shear test, what happens is that a geomembrane fabric which is given seam, that is two geomembrane fabrics which are stitched together or seamed together, we are going to evaluate the seam. Okay, that is how much load the seam or stitch can take. So by means of shear test, we will be applying a tensile stress from the top sheet through the weld and into the bottom sheet. Okay. Whereas in peel test, like normal, as the name suggests, you peel off the seam by means of applying force. Okay. And you evaluate the seam strength. Okay, so you take quite a few number of samples from the liner material which is used for the installation, and then test it for evaluating the seam strength. And if you find that quite a number of samples have failed, I mean they are having very poor quality seams, then you will have to replace the entire seam or the liner material. Okay, so this here gives you the criteria or the acceptability criteria, that is for seams tested in shear mode, the failure forces of 80 to 100 percentage of the unseamed sheet strength are usually specified for acceptability, compared to 50 to 80 percentage for those tested in peel mode. Okay, so this is just a criteria which tells you about the acceptability limits. Now let's move on to the non-destructive testing. So non-destructive testing is specifically conducted to evaluate the continuity of the seam. So as the seams are welded at the site, you have to perform the non-destructive testing. Okay. Now, non-destructive, there are various types of various methods which can be used, like vacuum test unit, air pressure testing, or spark testing, or ultrasonic testing. So, any of these tests can be selected for conducting the non-destructive testing. Now, lastly, it's about protection and backfilling. Now, this is basically that is the backfilling means once you have laid out these geomembranes, it should be covered, so as to assure its quality. Okay, so mostly it can be covered with the soil or either with another layer of geosynthetics depending upon the positioning of the geomembrane. So if you remember the cross section of our liner system, sometimes what we do is just to protect the geomembrane from further stresses or shocks, we can actually provide a layer of geotextile, non-woven thick geotextile over the geomembrane, so that the geomembrane will not rupture at a faster rate. Okay, so geotextile can protect the geomembrane. Or instead of that, you can either cover the geomembrane with soil, naturally available soil from the site, so as to ensure its quality throughout the construction of the landfill. Okay, so these are the various factors to be considered while we are constructing a liner material by using geomembranes. Now let's move on to geosynthetic clay liners. Now, another alternative option which can be used as a liner material is geosynthetic clay liners, that is from the family of geosynthetics. Now, here this geosynthetic clay liner is basically a bentonite which is sandwiched between two geotextile layers. Okay, so so these are three materials. There are two geotextile layers. In between them, we have a bentonite. So, for them to behave as one single unit, we have to bond them together by means of different processes. Okay, that is the bonding between the bentonite layer as well with the two geotextile layers kept above and below the bentonite. It is done by means of needle punching or stitching or gluing. Okay, so by any of these processes, you can actually stick these three layers together so that they will act as one single material. Okay. Now the usual thickness of the bentonite layer which is kept in this geotextile is 6 mm, and they are also factory manufactured geosynthetics only, and they can be used to replace your normal compacted clay liners, and there are many advantages of using geosynthetic clay liners over compacted clay liners. Okay, and most of these design requirements to be met by the geosynthetic clay liners is the same as that to be met by a geomembrane. Now, special as we saw in the case of geomembrane, here also we have to give specific considerations related to the manufacturing, handling, as well as installation. So, for geosynthetic clay liners also, we are the materials used is bentonite and two geotextile layers. So, mostly we will go for a non-woven type of geotextile. So that because non-woven is comparatively impermeable compared to a woven type, and obviously the selection of materials, that is what based on our requirement, we have to select the right quality geotextile and the right type of geotextile material, as well as whether to go for sodium bentonite or um, calcium bentonite. Okay, so based on our requirement of the site liner material. Now, basically, once you prepare the geosynthetic clay liners, these will also be available in the form of rolls or sheets. Okay, and then you have to cover these GCL rolls with a waterproof plastic material once you have manufactured it. Okay. Then regarding the handling, obviously it includes all the storing, the packaging, storing and transportation, so that the specific requirements to be met while packaging and transporting of these materials have to be followed. Otherwise, there are chances of the GCL getting defective due to these handling processes. Okay, so quality assurance personnel, he should certify that the material has passed the conformance testing and it is acceptable, because once all this handling process are complete, we have to check the material again for any defects before it is installed at site. Now the third factor to be considered is definitely that is during the installation process we have to follow the specifications given by the contractor or the quality assurance personnel, so that we can basically installation is related to all. It will include the placement of this material, whether soil or geosynthetic must be approved prior to placing of the GCL. Then joining of these materials, again these are sheets, so the individual sheets, they have to be joined together or seamed together to act as a single sheet like material. Okay, so these things have to be taken care and properly followed, so that we the GCL material can also be installed without undergoing any defects, and it can perform effectively and it can serve the function it is intended to serve. Okay, that is being a liner material. So this is all about the different alternate options for a liner material other than natural clay. As I said, either we can use natural clay as a liner material, or we can use bentonite enhanced soils, or if you are preferring geosynthetic materials, which has many advantages over natural materials, then we can go for either a geomembrane or a geosynthetic clay liners. And in some cases, we can use combination of both natural as well as geosynthetic liner materials in some I mean, in the construction of certain landfills. Okay, so this is all based on the final requirement or specifications that have been designed for a particular type of landfill. So thank you all.